So if you're watching this video, it's more than likely that you are looking to buy either your first e-bike or an e-bike. And I wanted to make this video because I think there's a number of things people should know before they buy one, which would help them make a better buying decision when it comes to e-bikes. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to give you some tips and things to think about that will help you buy the perfect e-bike for you. It is so dusty today, so dry. Look at the dust. So I've been riding e-bikes now for maybe like 2 years. So I feel like I've had a little bit of experience on them, know how they work, what they're good for, what they're not so good for, all the different types of bike you can buy, different motor sizes, different battery manufacturers, battery sizes and motor manufacturers, yeah, that's it. So it's probably worth starting with asking yourself the question when you buy an e-bike, where do you actually live? Because we live in Leithen here, and obviously we have huge mountains, big climbs, big descents. I would personally say that going for what people call a full fat e-bike would be a good decision up here, just because of the amount of like scope you have in the trails you've got to ride in the area as well. Whereas you may also want a full fat bike if, say, you lived in the city, but let's say for instance you lived on like a, I don't know, 3rd or 4th story flat. You don't want to be carting up a heavy e-bike up the stairs every day. It might also be worth thinking about if there is a place you can store an e-bike on the ground floor, and then find an e-bike that has a detachable battery you can take out, because some e-bikes it's quite hard to take the battery out of the bike. On a lot of them, like this one here, Vitus Summit, E-Summit, you can just whip the battery out really fast. It doesn't really matter where we are. Take the battery out, carry it around, it's not too heavy. First thing to think about is where you live, because that might determine whether you get a half fat e-bike with a smaller battery, or you get a full fat bike with a battery you can actually take out, which will make it easier to get up and down stairs or floors. The next thing to think about is like, where do you ride? Where do you mainly ride and what the trail's like? And obviously if you're in a place like I am in Leithen, or in Scotland in general, you have a lot to go at. So you've got big mountains, long descents, long climbs, everything is just big. So if you wanted to go out on big days, big adventures, and not be worried about your battery running out of juice halfway around, or you having to buy a second battery, I'd probably strongly consider a bike that has a bigger battery and motor for somewhere like this. But it might be different if you are somewhere that doesn't have as big a hills, say like down in the Surrey Hills in London or somewhere else. It might make more sense for you to get a bike that is lighter, more manageable, and something you can maneuver around a lot easier. Because big full fat e-bikes, you do have to ride them differently because of the weight of them. That view never gets old. And that kind of leads me on to my next point. Who do you ride with? Are your local group of friends, do they all have e-bikes? Do some of them e-bikes, or are they not sold on the idea of switching over yet from a normal analog bike? That was a thought that I had when we first got on e-bikes, that a lot of our friends didn't have access or didn't have the money to get 2 bikes, so they had to pick and choose, and for a lot of people they still just stuck with a normal analog bike, which is cool. When you're the only person on an e-bike, can get a little bit frustrating, because obviously friend circles may change. You may have to find a new circle of riding buddies who have e-bikes. I mean, you can ride an e-bike with people who have normal bikes, but don't be expecting the same amount of runs as you'd get if you're all on e-bikes. You can actually get tow ropes, I've seen, and I'll put a link in the description to the one I found. You can actually attach it to your seat post and tow people up on your e-bike, which is kind of cool. It is so damn hot today. I thought I'd come out in the evening at like 6 p.m. or something to avoid the heat, but it's still like nearly 30 degrees and I am melting. So the next thing to consider is budget. So how much money do you want to spend on an e-bike? They are a little bit pricier than normal bikes in my opinion, but you've still got a good range to suit all budgets with specs and stuff. So for instance, like this is my bike, and this retails at like £5,500 I think at the minute, making this video. And with that you get all top spec Rocktrek Zeb Ultimate forks, XT drivetrain, solid wheels, solid brakes, everything's decent. And that to me is a really, really good price for a bike, and really competitive. We have the other end of the scale where we have, say, like Santa Cruzes, Specialized, and even Pivots. Like I've seen those Pivot shuttles that are getting over the 10 grand mark, which I don't really know if you get twice the amount of performance you do from something like this, or something in that price range compared to 10, 12 grand on a bike. So that's something to consider. A lot of people buy Specialized and Santa Cruz and big brand names like that for like being part of a club, if you like. I think kind of like VW in mountain biking, you're paying for the brand and to be a part of that brand, which is cool for some people. That's what people want, good bikes. But I personally don't think there's twice as much performance to go along with the price. Then we can also go the opposite end of the scale in budget as well. So 5.5 grand for an e-bike, maybe a little bit on the expensive side for you, which is cool. You can probably pick an e-bike up for as little as maybe a shade under £3,000, something like that in the UK. And that will get you a decent e-bike to get you into the e-bike game, if you like. It won't have, you know, the highest spec on the market, but it'll have a solid spec to get you going. And then maybe over time you can upgrade the bike, or you can swap it out and get a high performance bike if you want to take it further. The next point on my little list is, what brand of motor do you want and battery? Because they're all different, they all do the same thing, they all assist you, but from what I've experienced, they all deliver power in different ways. So I have a Shimano motor and battery on this, and it seems solid enough. They all have their teething issues. I still think e-biking as a whole and motors on mountain bikes and stuff is still needs another couple of years to refine and improve the technology, but my Shimano motor seems to be playing ball so far. But you've also got Bosch motors, you've also got Yamaha motors, and Specialized that use their Bros motors. Might be worth doing a little bit of research into each of the motors, because that will then determine what bikes you should look at, because you can't get every bike you want with all the different motors. Definitely worth considering that. Next question is to do with bike sizing and like which size frame you should get for how tall you are, because I can tell you from experience that I find e-bike sizing a little bit different than normal bike sizing. I feel like the industry as a whole is a little bit backwards in the way that they recommend you get bigger and bigger bikes, which is like a trend I've seen over the last few years, which I don't entirely agree with. So people have been told to get bigger and bigger bikes so they've got more space to move around, it's more stable, slacker, blah blah blah. When you have an e-bike, you need to get your weight in the most balanced position of the front and the rear wheel, which is obvious as you do on any bike. Because you all almost want the bike to be optimal for climbing and descending, in my opinion, you want a shorter frame, a shorter bike in the reach, so you can get the weight over the front wheel when you are climbing. Believe it or not, you may have seen some of my previous videos, I am actually on a medium now, going against the grain on what the bike manufacturers recommend. I'm 6'1" and I'm on a medium. And that's kind of a common trend I've seen across a lot of mountain biking, of asking people what size bike they're on, and they're actually sizing down rather than sizing up, which is very interesting. But I feel just on a medium bike, for me, I feel just as comfortable on the downhills, I feel great on the climbs, I just feel balanced is probably the best way to describe it. Confident and balanced. So if you can, I know you can't with all bike manufacturers, but I'd probably highly recommend you go and test some different bike sizes out to get the right fit for you. Try the mountain climbs, try the mountain descents, and that'll give you a really good insight into what size frame you should get. It's probably almost worth mentioning as well, servicing and parts for e-bikes, like replacement parts. I feel it's very different to normal bikes. I feel that you do go through components, certain components, a lot faster because bike is just going through so much more, heavier bike. So for instance, like tires, cassettes, chains and brake pads, they're kind of the thing I find you'll go through fastest on an e-bike. I've got tire inserts in my bike. Again, there'll be a link in the description to go and get the ones that I use. They're called rim packs, and they just help against any rim damage, snake bites in tires and stuff like that, just to give that bit added protection. They do e-bike specific tires as well, which are thicker casing, same with rims as well. So all these things that companies are coming out with now just to help minimize the damage to an e-bike. Chains, you'll go through chains and brake pads faster just because of the weight of the bike and trying to slow the big beast down. And chains as well, sometimes you can be a bit aggressive changing and pedaling and stuff. There's a lot of pressure going through that chain and cassette, so they may need replacing more often than you think. It's just worth having that in mind, so you can maybe set aside a budget for that every couple of months. That's kind of it, guys. I'm pretty much at the top of the trail I'm going to drop into, and I hope those little tips helped you out with making a buying decision for what e-bike you're going to get, because obviously it's new to a lot of people, a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I just thought I'd share my experience so far so I can make the decision the buying decision and the process easier for you guys. Let me know if you've got any questions below on e-bikes or buying e-bikes, and if this video did help, give it a thumbs up because it helps spread the video to more people thanks to the algorithm and stuff. I'm going to go and drop into a trail. Hopefully see you on e-bike soon.